Welcome to 5 Minutes, your quick dive into the wide-ranging world of insurance, technology, and leadership. I'm Miguel Edwards, and I'll be your guide as we explore these topics that are transforming not just the insurance industry, but the business world at large. Along with sharing observations I've made over the span of my career in insurance, technology, and operations, I'll be chatting with some of the brightest minds in business and leadership. Whether you're a seasoned executive or a rising star, an industry expert, or just curious about how technology is revolutionizing insurance, this is your perfect spot for your weekly dose of insights. This is 5 Minutes.
I think it makes it very interesting and cost effective and low risk for companies to, have a remote workforce providing services or providing work out of Latin America. So I think that's kind of like the most interesting parts of the biggest value for any company, in this case especially insurance. Again, when we talk about mid-market, managing a team offshore, and you have more experience than me on that, requires a lot of effort, teams, people being available midnight, all those things that happen. And when you have a big company with a big team, it's if you're going to have 500, 400, 300 people in India or China or whatever, it's easy to justify having a team in the US to manage that team. But when you're looking at teams of 20, 30, 40 people, having a layer of people to manage that, it becomes like a very difficult thing to do. So when again you have the resources in your same time zone and they're able to join the calls, to join the meetings, to even to travel or whatever, makes it much more easy to manage.
I remember when we first chatted, and you actually introduced me to the concept of nearshoring. I was, very, very familiar, obviously, with offshoring. I had offshore teams, and I remember being up late at night myself on calls with people just so that I could be on their time zone. But you introduced me. And I also, too, remember the conversation. And I got to admit, I'm a little embarrassed about how naive I was in that conversation. I don't know if you remember, but I was worried about things like language, like political risk, like crime, just general stability in Latin America, Mexico in particular. And you had to re-educate me. You had to reorient me around what that really meant, what it looked like. Is that a kind of a typical concern that you get when you're talking to potential customers and you kind of talk a little bit about your talk track in trying to reorient people's thinking to what Latin America actually looks like? And really, by the way, I'm also pretty embarrassed because yo soy panameño. I'm from Panama. Like, this is my background, right? Yeah. And so it's just so that naivete was really fascinating for me to overcome. Talk a little bit about that.
Every time since I started here in the US doing that in 2005 or a little bit before that and up to now, always the first thing to talk about is, Mexico is known for tacos, tortas, beaches, music, good food, etc. But nobody sees, it's not known that there's a large business environment, and I'm talking about Mexico, but if you put together all the countries in Latin America, you're looking at a huge amount of people, and countries that have, like Mexico, had presence of global companies over the years. They also do that. They also have large telecom, large banking, large insurance. Everything you can think of in terms of industries, it's there. Thing is, it's a little bit like spread in many countries that are small. you have the big players, like Brazil or like Mexico with over 100 and over 200 million people. But then you have all these little countries that have 20, 30 million people or whatever, but they do have an important business. And, like you mentioned, you had a concern about crime. And I was like, okay, but why are you concerned about crime? You're not going to have to be there.
Yeah.
And honestly, in all these years, just as it happens in the US, I've had people that got their laptops stolen from the car or things like that do happen. And of course, if you go to big cities like Mexico City or like Sao Paulo or something like that, of course,
Sure.
if you look at the crime rates, they're going to look big because they have a huge population. But I've shared with you statistics on homicide rates on cities like Mexico City or Guadalajara compared to New Orleans,
Chicago,
Baltimore, Chicago, or whatever. And honestly, those things are not really very different.
Thank you for joining this episode of 5 Minutes. If you've enjoyed our discussion, we'd love for you to share it with anyone else you think might find it interesting. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on and hit that bell to stay on top of the game with our practical 5-minute episodes. We look forward to seeing you again next week.